Hello, Accelerated Math 7-8 students. We are working in Module 13, and this is Lesson 3. And it is called Negative Exponents. All right, here we go. Get our notes together so that we can see negative exponents. So our goal for today we will learn how to factor negative exponents into positive exponents. Notice I used some interesting math vocabulary. Factor. Factor means that we're going to be pulling numbers out, and when we pull numbers out, that means we divide them out of the big numbers, so we're going to be pulling something out. So today we will learn how to factor negative exponents into positive exponents. The question that I want you to be thinking about during this lesson is, how do you simplify negative exponents? All right, so going back to some things that we know, I'm looking at this and I'm asking you to remember this little pattern that we've been working with in the last couple of lessons. So if you were to show 2 raised to the 4th power, it means 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And then I'm asking you to take that power and divide it by 2. If I take this power and I divide it by 2, what is actually happening is you are undoing one of the multiplication patterns that you did. So I'm going to write it a different way so that you can see what I'm talking about. So 2 raised to the 4th power looks like this. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Then it's asking you to divide by 2. And I'm writing it a different way so that you can see it, because you have been learning for a really long time in these classes that we've been doing together that you can take a number, dividing it by itself, and it simplifies to 1. So I can say 2 divided by 2 gives me a 1. So now when I look at what I have left over, I have 2 times 2 times 2 times 1. Well, 1 times any number doesn't change it. So what I actually have is 2 to the 3rd power. Okay? Does everybody see how that works? All right, so now let's try the next one. So now we're starting with what we have, which was 2 times 2 times 2. Again, dividing that by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 2 equals 2 to the 2nd power. So that's what you would write right there. Okay? Taking that to the next one. So we have 2 times 2. Then it says divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And 1 times 2 is 2. So what I'm left with is 2 to the 1st power, because there's only 1 2. Okay? Then I take that number, which is 2, and I divide it by 2 right here, and I'm left with 1. So I have 2 raised to the 0 power, because any number of 2 raised to the 0 power gives me an answer of 1. We've talked about that before. This is not new. So 2 to the 0 power gives you 1. All right, now this is the part where we haven't talked about it. Notice the pattern in the exponents. What is happening to the exponents every single time? It went from 3 down to 2, down to 1, down to 0. And let's remember what we've learned about dividing same bases. These are all the same base, yes or no? These are all 2's. So if you have the same base, what you're allowed to do is you are allowed to take the exponents and subtract them. So let's focus on this one. If we have 2 raised to the power of 1, and we're dividing it by 2 raised to the power of 1, which is what we did right here, you take 2 and you subtract the exponents. Okay, well 2 is the base. Subtract the exponents. 1 minus 1 gives you 0, so that's how you got 2 raised to the 0 power. Well, what happens if we keep going? Well, let's try it. We have 2 raised to the 0 power, which we know is a 1, divided by 2, right, because that's what we've been doing, which is a 1. What is 2 raised to the 0 minus 1? Because remember the rule, you subtract the exponent. It would still be a base of 2, but what is 0 minus 1? Negative 1. Okay? So this is all building on the rules that we've been looking at, okay? And so if you're looking at this, you should have filled it in. This would be 2 to the 2. This would be 2 to the 1. This is going to be 2 to the 0. And you know that 2 to the 0 is actually a 1. We've already proven it right here. So you're taking 1 divided by 2, and you get the answer of 2 to the negative 1 power because of this example right here. We took 2 to the 0, divided it by 2 to the 1. 2 is your base. Exponent subtract 0 minus 1 gives you a negative 1. So that's how we arrived at a negative 1 right here. Okay? So now let's keep going with the way that we're going. All right, so the next one, if you're following the pattern, you take the power from before, right? So we have 2 to the negative 1 divided by 2 to the first power because we're always dividing by 2. 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 So again, remember the rule. The base is the same. Subtract the exponents. So negative 1 minus 1, or negative 1 plus a negative 1, gives us 2 to the negative 2. Do you see where we're coming up with this? Okay, so then you take that number, 2 to the negative 2, and you divide it by 2 to the 1, same base, subtract exponents, so you get negative 2 minus 1, which is the same thing as adding a negative. So negative 2 plus a negative 1 gives me 2 to the negative 3. Okay? So that's using the rules, right? So when you're dividing numbers with same bases, you subtract the exponents. But let's go back up one step and let's talk about what it really looks like. Okay? So you learned up here that when you have 2 to the 0, what that actually equals is 1. Then it's asking us to divide by 2. So writing it another way, that gives us an answer of 1 divided by 2 is 1/2. Okay, so we now have proven that 1/2 is the same as 2 to the negative 1 power. That's what that means. Okay, so then when we have 2 to the negative 1 power, which is the same as 1/2, when you take 1/2 and you divide it by 2, okay, remember this is going back all the way to 6th grade math, so if we're doing the big fat chunky one, right, so this is really 2 over 1, so you multiply by the reciprocal to get it, so this would be multiplied by 1/2. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 2 is 2. That equals a 1 on the bottom. What you do to one side, you have to do the other. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. So the answer is 1/4. Okay? I know, it's been a long time since we've seen that, but that's exactly what you're doing. So you think of it as 1/2 divided by 2 gives us an answer of 1/4. Okay? And remember, 1/4 is the same as 2 to the negative 2, because we proved that over here. Okay? When you have 1/2, right, it's right here, so 2 to the 0 is 1, 2 to the 2, and then you subtract, and you got 2 to the negative 1, then we took 2 to the negative 1 divided by 2 to the 1, subtract your exponents, and you got 2 to the negative 2. So do you see why this one right here is the same as 2 to the negative 2? Okay? And so on here, if we take 2 to the negative 2, so I need a new sticky, sorry, I'm running out of stickies. If we take another sticky, and we start with 2 to the negative 2, which we already learned is 1/4, and we divide it by 2, right? Remember our rule, multiply by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is 1/2, the reciprocal is 1/2. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So this is a 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 2 is 8. And so we get 1/8. And so then how we have to prove that is we take 2 to the negative 2 divided by 2 to the 1. Bases are the same. Subtract the exponents. Negative 2 minus 1. Same thing as adding a negative 1. So 2 to the negative 3. So 2 to the negative 3 is the same as 1/8. Okay? It's kind of confusing, I know, but we will get it with more practice. So this would be 2 to the negative 2, and then this one would be 2 to the negative 3. And I've just taught you how to get there, okay? All right, so let's look at what it says underneath. What happens when you divide by the base? What happens when you divide by the base? What happens to the exponents? They are all decreasing by 1, okay? Does dividing by 2 mean the same as multiplying by 1/2? It absolutely does, and we've already proven that multiple times. But the reason why I threw that one in there is that if you would rather say 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 1/2, you're going to get the same thing. 2 times 2 times 2 times 1/2, you're going to get the same thing. 2 times 2 times 1/2, you're going to get the same thing, and so on all the way down, because we proved it over here that we were multiplying by 1/2 each time, okay? So those two mean the same thing. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing, all right? But I'll put these stickies up there so that we can look at it again one more time. So 2 to the 4th divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the 3rd, right? Okay. 2 to the 3rd divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the 2nd. 2 to the 2nd divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the 1. 2 divided by 2 gives us 2 to the 0, which is 1. 2 to the 1 divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the 0. 2 to the 0 divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the negative 1. Okay? And then we went over here. 2 to the 1, or 2 to the negative 1, because that's what we had up here, divided by 2 to the 1 is 2. Negative 1 plus a negative 1 gives us 2 to the negative 2. 2 to the negative 2 divided by 2 to the 1 gives us 2 to the negative 2 plus a negative 1, and you get 2 to the negative 3. Okay, so that's what all of that means. What you need to know these values mean is when you have 2 to the negative 1, what the answer really is you're taking 1/2. Okay, everybody see that? Okay, and then we know that 2 to the negative 2 then equals 1/4. Okay, 2 to the negative 3 equals 1/8. So basically what you're doing is you're taking that number from above and you're multiplying it by 1/2, or you're dividing it by 2. Okay, so 2 to the 4th divided by 2 is 2 to the 3rd. 2 to the 3rd divided by 2 is 2 to the 2nd. 2 to the 2nd divided by 2 is 2 to the 1st. 2 to the 1st divided by 2 is 2 to the 0. 2 to the 0 divided by 2 is 2 to the negative 1. 2 to the negative 1 divided by 2 is 2 to the negative 2. 2 to the negative 2 divided by 2 is 2 to the negative 3. And remember, dividing by 2 is the same thing as multiplying by 2, or multiplying by 1/2, which is what this shows down here. Okay? Please don't get too confused. When you actually get to play with it, it's going to be a lot easier. All right, so let's move on, because I want to make sure that you understand this. When you simplify negative exponents, remember that the negative exponents mean that the power is less than 1. So it is a fraction with a numerator of 1 and a denominator as the base. Okay, so that's kind of the rule that explains it. Let's practice a few. 4 to the negative 2. So our base is going to be 4, so that means the denominator is 4. And it says to the negative 2. Okay, so if we look up here, we know that 4 to the 0 gives us a 1. So that's where the 1 comes from, right? And then we know that we have to take the base 2 times. So our answer would be negative, or 1/4 times 1/4 gives us 1/16. Okay? Because it says up here that when you have a negative exponent, your numerator becomes 1, and then your base is the denominator, and the exponent tells you how many times you multiply it. So we have 1/4 times 1/4, because of that 2 right there, and our answer is 1/16. So that's how you solve it. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, so we have 3/6. We're going to have to do 4 times, so that's our base, and our 1 would be up here. So if we're writing it out, it would be 1 3/6 times 1 3/6. I know this is very confusing. 1 3/6 times 1 3/6. Okay? So if we're multiplying that all the way across, we would get 1, and then what is 3 times 3? 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81 over, and then you're going to go 6 times 6 is 36. 36 times 6. This is where a calculator comes very handy. 18, 19, 20, 21 is 216. And then we have one more 6, so you're going to take 216 times 6, and you get 1,096. But is this a fraction? No, it's a compound fraction, which we can't have. So you're going to multiply by the reciprocal, right? So what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So you get 1,296 divided by 81, and then you're just going to do that math. So you're going to take 1,296 divided by 81, and I'm going to use a calculator, and so are you. So we're going to take 1,096 divided by 81, and you get 16. So 16 is the answer. Pretty crazy once you're playing with it and figuring it all out. Okay? All right, let's try this one then. What does this one mean? This is really 3 2/10. Yeah? And 3 2/10 is actually 32 tenths. So you're taking 1 over 32 tenths times 1 over 32 tenths times 1 over 32 tenths. Pretty crazy, huh? So 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 32 times 32 times 32. Let's use a calculator. Save space. You get, holy moly, that giant thing. And we're dividing that by 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. Okay? And so that would give us 32,768 divided by 1,000. And you get 32 and 768 thousandths as your answer. But, yeah, so multiplying by the reciprocal, wait a minute, no, we have to multiply by the reciprocal, I forgot. So you're going to put 1,032,768, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Sorry, I forgot what I was doing. And then we can simplify that. So we're going to go for now, time's sake, 32,768 is your answer, knowing that that can be simplified. Okay? This last step is super important. Don't forget that if you have a fraction down here at the bottom, you have to multiply by the reciprocal so that you can get the correct answer on there. Okay? So I want you to try these. I'm giving you the easy ones to try. So I want you to try this one, and this one, and this one, and see what you come up with. Okay? On the second page, before I run out of time, let's not worry about these. I will help you with these in class. So I'll make sure that these go into the try these section because I want you to feel comfortable with figuring out those. Please don't be overwhelmed. It's fun once you can figure out what's going on. So remember, really quick review. If your exponent is negative, you need to set up your fraction so that your numerator is 1 and your base is your denominator. The exponent itself tells you how many times. So how many times do we need to do this one? Hopefully you answered 9, and I ran off the page, so you're going to have to fit it in there 9 times. So the exponent tells you the number of times. The negative means your numerator is 1. The base becomes your denominator. Don't forget that. Okay? Pretty fun once you figure it out. Okay, let's go back to our goal for today. Today we will learn how to factor negative exponents into positives. Look at this. Is this a positive? Yep. Is this a positive? Yep. Is this a positive? Yep. Is this going to be a positive? Yep. So we did exactly what you're supposed to. The question, how do you simplify negative exponents? You remember that the numerator is always 1, no matter the situation. The numerator is always 1. The denominator is always your base. Always your base. Okay? And that's how you do it. All right? So play around with it. Be ready, because our practice on this is kind of tough, but I think you guys can handle it. That's all I've got for you. Talk to you soon. Bye.